bouncing tracks and mix down selection in Studio One is handled, at least in version 6.5. I'm on 6.6.4 professional. I don't have a subscription. The way it's handled is very inconsistent. It's unreliable. And to be honest, I don't think they QA'd their software. Like, and this is like a huge feature. It's crazy to me that it's working this way. I don't know if it was fixed in version 7, but I'll give you an example of kind of 3 issues. And actually, I sent them an email, and the response they gave me was, it wasn't good. So there's kind of like 3 main issues. The first issue is that if you say you have a vocal group, right? So I have, for example, these are muted, but just so this is not so unclear, I have a vocal group here of 6 vocal tracks, and they're going to a bus. Each of these vocals is panned a little bit. This one's to the left, this is to the left all the way, this is to the right, etc. Let's start with bounce to new track. If I bounce these to new track, it's all fine, right? But it doesn't take into account the panning. So now I have this track that it sounds like it did without the insert, like it sounds like it should with the insert effects built into the track, right? But the panning's not there. So then I have to go back and check to make sure that I match the panning. It just makes it an extra step that, you know, if you have a lot of this to do, it gets cumbersome. And then you start doubting, like for myself, I started doubting, like, okay, it did not include the panning. Did it include the volume automation? So then I have to go and run a test, or I have to rebounce it and try it with volume automation and see. It's just a lot of work that the user has to do that you should not have to do that. You know, it should have, whatever way it behaves should be documented in their manual, and it should be consistent. So if they don't want to include panning or volume automation when you're bouncing to a new track, they should state that in the document, and it should be clear. The second part of this for bounce to new track is that it doesn't act consistent between audio tracks and instrument tracks. So in instrument tracks, it will include the pan, and I believe it will include the volume automation. So, you know, it's easy to forget this. I actually forgot because I ran through, if you go back no one's going to go back on my live streams, which no one watches. I went through like a day or two of like trying to figure out why like these things are working differently. And so it works a bit different. Okay, that's like one thing. The second aspect is you could argue, well, why don't you just use mix down selection? The problem is if you use mix down selection, it's going to run your tracks through the bus. So say I go right click on just these 6 and I go mix down selection, it will take into account whatever effects are on my bus. So in this case, I made sure that I deselected my inserts, I deselected my sends, and then I did some tests. Like I actually mix down selection, I tested it with the bus muted, with the effects on, with the effects not on, and I thought I had it right. I was like, okay, if I mix down selection these 6 tracks and I deactivate my inserts and I deactivate my sends, it sounds like it should. Like, sounds like the panning is right. It sounds like these tracks without the insert effects on, which is what you want. You want to bake in your insert effects, right? But the problem is it takes into account any volume automation on the bus. So now you have a problem that, say you mix down these 6, you deactivated the insert and sends, your resulting audio file will have that volume automation there. So now if you were to route that file you had outputted, which like say in my case was, I think it was one of these, I think it was this one, where I deactivated the inserts and the sends. If I was to run this back through the bus, I have to remember now that that file I had bounced had the volume automation baked in. So now I have to make sure that I take any volume automation off of here. So in this case, I would have to deselect this. It's not, it's like, how are you going to remember? Like, it's hard to remember all these things. And, if you're making your own music, or, maybe you would remember this if you're mixing like all the time and you're a professional mixer, you might remember these things. But I still think that these are things that should be, again, either documented. So like, I shouldn't have to go and run all these tests to make sure that this is how the software is working, right? It should be documented and say, like, at least give me a chart or something and say, hey, if you mix down selection, if you bounce a new track, this, and this is included. If it's an audio track, at least, I might have to make a chart for this myself, just for myself, because it's so unreliable, so confusing. Okay, the third part is, you could recommend that I do ghost recording. And I tried using ghost outputs, so I had made 2 ghost outputs. And we're going to give this a sec here to load. This is going to take a second. So I had made 2 ghost outputs, and the first one, when I use that method, if you don't know what the ghost output method is, basically you just output your bus to like a dummy output that's not going anywhere, and then you create an audio track and you record that dummy output. And the idea being, it's kind of like a cheat way to freeze a track. And Presonus actually has a video on their YouTube channel about this. So I did that. I had made a ghost output 01 and 02, and I thought it was actually fine. The first ghost output 01, I tested it. I deleted it now, but I had tested it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is fine. This works. But there's a delay. So I tried the second ghost output, and it was delayed even more. It was delayed by about 200 milliseconds. So you could see this here. This is the ghost record I did, and these are the mix down selections. You can see the mix down selections, the start points are accurate. Like, they're starting where, they start around where my actual tracks started, right? There could be some waveform cancellation here, so it's not going to be like right there, but it's almost right there, right? It's, in fact, it's like starting from here. So, and maybe the waveform, there's some, I didn't max out my view, so it looks to me, it looks close enough. But if you look at this ghost record version I did, it's starting here. That is like a big difference. So now I have to drag this back. I have to line it up and make sure that what I'm hearing hasn't changed. And it's just, it adds so much extra thinking and work, and it's not consistent. And as a user, this is like so frustrating. And I don't know if this is an issue with 6.6. I don't know. I had used version 5 before. I had version 5, and then I wanted to buy a pro license. I was actually fine with version 5, but I wanted to buy a professional license. I don't like subscriptions. So I had bought 6.5 professional, and I've encountered this kind of issues. There's been some other issues I've had too, but if I remember them, I'll make a separate video about it. I think the biggest frustration I had out of all of this was that I emailed Presonus about a month or 2 ago, and I addressed this with them. I was like, hey, this isn't working consistently. Like, bounce to new track doesn't work consistently between audio and instrument tracks. Like, panning is included in this situation and not in another. Mix down selection, if it's going through a bus, it's like not consistent. Like, it'll take, I forgot what I wrote, but it takes inserts or it doesn't or whatever. If I ghost record now, I found out if I ghost record, there's like a sufficient delay where I have to like manually align the tracks. And basically the response they gave me was, I would recommend you try out. They didn't address any of my issues. And I was pretty clear. I gave them my system, my specs, and all they said, like, this is what I had written here, my original. Hi, can anyone confirm if these are expected behaviors? Oh, another issue I forgot. If you're copying send automation, there's an option that if you're copying send automation to another track, that you should just hold down Alt and you can drag it to the other track, but it won't copy the automation lanes. The only way it copies automation lanes, and this is not documented, I had to do my own hair pulling, I have none left, and I had to basically figure it out that send automation only gets pulled when you're in console view. So if you have the console open and you open up your rack, then you hold down Alt and you can drag it over, and then it will copy the lane over. It won't do it from the regular view. And it's, again, this is like not documented anywhere, right? It's just you're doing your own QA, which is, to me, this is crazy. So I sent this email, like, this was actually back in I had this issue back in February, and I thought I found a way around it with this ghost record method, but now that I figured out that there's a delay with it. Obviously there's some issue with plugin compensation. It's not, I don't know, like on the back end, like it's not compensating. Like when you do a mix down selection, there's a delay, right? So I just asked them, hey, like, is this a known issue? Are these bugs on an audio track, like volume automation is included but not panning when you bounce to a new track? Like if you use down mix down selection, then you have to deselect sends and you have to make sure that you take the volume. Like, it's confusing, right? And the response they gave me about a week later was, thanks for contacting. I would recommend you try these out with Studio One Pro 7. See if they work for you as you want in the current version. Here's the demo. It's like, dude, man, I don't want to, like, I was so frustrated with this response. I didn't even reply. I was like, forget this. I'm just going to use Ghost Record. Now I saw that there's this issue with delays in Ghost Recording, and I'm so annoyed that I gave a follow-up email and I re-documented the issues, and I told them about this issue with the Ghost Record, and I basically just said, like, how can I be sure these issues are resolved in version 7, or are you just trying to pan me? See what I did there? For $150 for features that don't work, that should work. You need to QA the software properly and make sure the expected behavior is documented properly in the documentation. I have to spend my own time QAing your software to make sure I have reliable methods to work. It's not sufficient. This is extremely disappointing. So I just wanted to bring this up because I would love to know if anyone's out there and is using version 7, if this is fixed, because I don't want to upgrade and have to go through this mess again and trying to figure these things out. The last thing is, I know there's this option for export stems, and that's something that I'm gonna test out, but I'm still kind of wary about it because in the bus, like if I select a bus, for example, there's no options for including sends or volume automation or panning. Like, there's just no options. So I don't know. Again, this is like more testing I have to do to figure out whether it will include like what it will include and what it will not include, right? It's not consistent. If I check the manual, I'm gonna bet that there's no information about this. The audio file includes the results of all inserts and sends on the track or channel. If you don't want the sends, disable them before exporting. Okay, so they said that. I'll have to test this to see if it works as they say. But it doesn't talk about volume or panning automation in here. So I will test this and see. But if anyone has any information on this or how they're dealing with it, I would love to know. And um, I also kind of want to let people know, because if you do go to Studio One, you got to know that there are these kind of quirks and bugs. And I don't know if Cubase, this kind of stuff makes me think about switching DAWs. I already switched from FL Studio because FL Studio is horrible for audio editing. You can't really, it has things you can do, but you can't do like takes to layer, like layers, takes to layers. And the way you can comp in Studio One, it's awesome. There's just so many things I like about it, but there's like these quirks and workflows which it's just very time consuming, and I'm sure that I'll get past it and find a way around this, but it's so frustrating when you're in the moment and trying to figure it out. But I have read things of people saying that Cubase is more Cubase is basically more what's the word, reliable, or it's more consistent, and you just don't have issues like this. Or if you want to like freeze a bus to save CPU processing, it's like very easy to do so. So I don't know. There you go. And thanks for watching.